Welcome to Wednesday, Secular Soapbox Day here on the Skeptic Haven Network. I'm your host, Mike Wiseman. Today's special guest is David Warnock. As always, I'll be joined by my favorite co-host, Apostacie. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support the show on Patreon. Let's start the show. Welcome to the show, everybody.
Yay.
Apostacie, thanks for joining us as always.
Thank
Dave
you.
Warnock is our special guest today. Holy cow, how you doing, Dave?
Great. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Glad
Good
to
see
have you
guys.
here. Absolutely. Why don't you tell the folks at home a little bit about what you do?
Oh, I have an organization called Dying Out Loud that started about 3.5 years ago after I was diagnosed with ALS. And it began just organically. I began to be booked on podcasts and YouTube shows like this and travel to speak at different organizations and conferences and things, and wrote a book. There it is. Boy, right on cue. Childish Things.
We're good
My
like
memoir came out in February of this year. And so I do my own live stream show on Monday nights called That GD Show with my co-host Genevieve. It doesn't stand for That Goddamn Show. It stands for the Genevieve and Dave Show. Or both. So that's a lot of what I do. I'm a regular co-host on the Atheist Experience about once a month. And I've had a busy travel year this year. Did a lot of conferences. It's kind of slowing down toward the end of the year, and I'm kind of ready for a little break. But that's a bit about me.
Nice. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for telling your story. I've heard you definitely on the Atheist Experience. Amazing job as always. I mean, you're articulate and get straight to the point. It's awesome. Thank you. So you grew up a Christian though. This is you weren't an atheist always. What happened there? So what brought you into the Christian faith originally?
I was caught up in the Jesus movement of the 70s. Older, that's way before either of you probably were born. But in the early 70s, the Jesus freaks, the Jesus movement was a big thing. It's on the cover of Time magazine. There were musicals about Jesus, and rock bands were singing about Jesus, and he was a superstar, if you will. Yeah. So I got all excited about that because my older brother was into that, and he kind of led me into that. And as I detail in my book, it just became a runaway freight train for me, and I lived in that world for 3.5 decades before one rainy Saturday day, I was praying for a parking spot on a busy day, and I didn't get it. And I just said, that's it. I'm done.
That's like me.
God can't at least do that. Right? What are we doing here? No, it was very much a series of small cuts, as anybody, as almost everyone I've talked to deconstructed and deconverted. It's the deconstruction process is long and arduous, and is a series of questions and investigations and thoughts and just a process that's often very painful and time consuming. But the deconversion process is that's kind of a moment when you realize I don't believe anymore. And I went from that's kind of my conversion moment was a moment in time back in 1973, but my deconversion moment was also a moment in time. It was following a long deconstruction process. And so it was just a series of a lot of questions that didn't have good answers. And a lot of, I've summed it up on many interviews by saying I just got tired of making excuses for God's poor behavior. Because that's what it felt like, that I was all of my life trying to make excuses for God not showing up, for God not doing this, for God not doing that. And I just got tired of that after a while. He can answer his own fucking questions. I'm done.
It's a long, arduous process, that's for sure. I'm glad you made it out of there.
Yeah, me too.
Was it before or after the ALS diagnosed?
Quite a bit before, actually. I deconstructed. That process was 2009, 2010. By 2011, I was pretty much out of it. I'd to the conclusion God wasn't there, never had been. And so I lived my life and was just living and working as an atheist. I wasn't even active I didn't do like apostasy and deconvert on Wednesday and go on a show on Sunday.
I was actually going to ask you about that. If you were an activist before.
No, I was just kind of minding my own business. I was in the insurance business. I was living a good life. I was still married at the time to a Christian, and she kind of doubled down on her faith. And that obviously became untenable for me. I was the one that just couldn't continue to live that life. It felt like I wasn't able to be myself in my own home. So I couldn't maintain that. And so but I did for 5 or 6 years. And then by 2016, I left that marriage and then was living as in Nashville and just living my best life, just enjoying life. I had a lot of ex-Christian atheist friends that we did a lot of things together. We had a monthly meeting and I would go to conferences and stuff, but I wasn't doing anything like this. I wasn't going on shows. I wasn't speaking. It was only after my diagnosis in 2019 that a friend of mine said, you need to speak up about stuff, Dave, whatever time you have left. And at that time we didn't know, they tell you're going to live 3 to 5 years. So I didn't know how long I had in terms of quality of life years. And I just wanted to, so she started booking me on shows and reaching out to podcast and YouTube shows, and they never heard of me. She emails Seth and says, Dave Warnock could be a good guest. Who? Why would I have him on my show?
Seth.
Yeah. But then they started seeing shows, and they started seeing these interviews and apparently liked what they saw and liked the way that I talked about what was important, life and death, and living as an atheist and dying as an atheist and those kind of things. And so more and more started booking me on shows, and I started getting invited to come speak here and there, and so that's really my activism. Wasn't a planned thing. It was just something that happened organically, and I felt like I needed to speak up, and I felt like I had some things to say, and so hey Ryan, good to see her here. I love Ryan. So yeah, that's kind of how that happened. It just kind of happened. I'd kind of had a thought to write my memoir even before the ALS diagnosis, but that certainly prompted me to get it done and write the story, because I felt like it was something that I needed to tell.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard you speak on a lot of different interviews and different podcasts, and you definitely have a knack for public speaking. And so is that something that you could touch on that you maybe did prior to becoming an atheist?
I was a preacher.
Yeah.
A lot of those.
There it is.
There it is. There's the secret's out. The secret is out. I always had a knack for this. It wasn't something God gave me.
No.
And interestingly enough, if you haven't read the book, it's I talk about that at the early part of the book. There was I think it's chapter 2. T. Anson, he was a teacher of mine. I'm spoiler alert if you haven't read the book, but he was my speech teacher and my drama coach, and I wasn't in drama until he invited me to try out for a play. And the only reason I tried it for the play is this really cute girl that I wanted to date was always in the plays.
That's how it
and
works.
I thought, oh, that's a way I can get next to her. Actually, we ended up dating because we ended up in the play. I was the male lead. She was the female lead. We had a wedding scene in the play, and darn it, we had to rehearse that wedding scene and that wedding kiss every day for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Terrible.
So we ended up dating after that. But in the speech class, we were doing these impromptu speeches where you pull a topic out of a bag and then you have to give a speech on it.
Oh,
and it's a good exercise, actually. And the speech teacher just went nuts after I gave mine. He jumped up from his chair and he said, "That's a speech, people. That's what I'm talking about." And he comes up to the front and he grabs me by the neck and he stands me there like a display. And he just went on and on about, and I just, that was the first time I thought that I could be good at something like that. And then my English teacher said the same thing about writing. And funny enough, I've reconnected with both of those teachers since I wrote my book.
Wow.
And the English teacher actually lives about 45 minutes from here. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we've had coffee a couple of times and reconnected. And I gave him a copy of the book, and in the front of it, I said, "You started this, see what you started," or something like that. But I did. For a lot of the years of my Christianity, I was a pastor on staff at churches, and I did a lot of preaching and teaching, and so over the years and I was always it always came easy to me. It did. I just I'm a blabbermouth. I just talk and talk and talk. So doing these kind of shows and speaking at conferences and stuff is just it's an easy thing for me to do, because I've got years and years of experience standing in front of people and just talking. And that's what I do. And I don't get nervous. I don't worry about it. I hardly even prepare stuff. I just kind of in my head kind of think about what I want to talk about, and then just get up and talk.
Just let the Spirit lead you.
No.
Girl, that's it. Oh, we're having church now. We're having church.
Oh, no. Not that kind of show, guys. Not that kind of show.
Keep it. Mike's going, keep it clean, guys. Keep it clean.
That's for another time. No. So your show, since you like to talk a lot, you have a show as well.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Well, that GD show, it's a Monday night live stream at 9:00 on Eastern on Monday nights. And
GD show.
That GD show.
I love it.
Great title.
Well, yeah, I like the title too. But what it allows us to do is we're really flexible in what we talk about. I won't be on the next Monday night show because I'll be in New York City visiting my son. But Genevieve is planning to do a show about upcoming elections, the midterms, because she used to work for a campaign in North Carolina, and she's trying to get that politician on the show and just talk about elections in our country and all the issues that go with that. We do talk about deconstruction and deconversion. We talk about faith and not faith. We've had so many. We have a guest usually, or guests, and then Genevieve and I kind of back and forth interview. We take calls. It's a live show, and we do take calls. But it's a host of like in next month we'll have a group called the Final Exit Network on. It's a group I work with who help people with terminal diseases make end of life choices on their own terms, and they have mechanisms in place for that. Like on Halloween night, on a Monday night, we're going to have a Halloween show, and we're going to have a panel of ex-Christians who have Halloween stories where what they couldn't do as Christians. You couldn't. I don't know that, Stacy. That might be your story.
Well, actually, this will be my children's first time celebrating Halloween.
Because you couldn't as a Christian, right? Because it's the witch's holy hour.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a group of ex-Christians kind of share their stories of what growing up in fundamentalism was like in Halloween and the nonsense of that. So it's that kind of show. It's a free flow, a host of different subjects and different hosts. We've had some Christians on there. We've had an evangelical Christian talk about his faith, and we dialogue back and forth about that. So it's a lot of fun. We've got a good loyal following, and it's an interesting show that I'm enjoying it, and I'm happy about it because it's different than a lot of shows you see on there. I honestly do the Atheist Experience show about once a month. I'm a regular co-host. I really don't want to do it more than that because I'm really kind of tired of the argument. God's real. No, he's not. Yes, he is. No, he isn't. I know you are. What am I? I just, they do it well. That's their niche, and I'm happy to contribute to that. But I'm more interested in talking about other things on the whole.
Mm-hmm. What kind of calls do you normally get on your show? Is it related to the topic that week, or do people call in with questions?
It can be. Most of them are related to the topic of the week. We don't get a ton of calls. It's not about the calls. The show isn't,
Okay.
but we do get a few each week,
Mhm.
and they're interesting. You know, it can be anything from wanting to talk to the host, to the guest that week, and it could be something that's kind of off topic, but they just wanted to get our take on it. You know, if Genevieve and I and the host. The interesting thing about Genevieve, if you don't know her, is that she never was a Christian. She comes from a completely different perspective, having always been an atheist, and she's younger. She's maybe 30, 31. And so you got this old fart ex-Christian guy, and this young woman who's never been in that world. And it allows us to attack a subject from two uniquely different perspectives. And that, I think, adds value.
That's
Definitely.
really cool. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead, Michael.
your family, how did they take your deconversion? Like you said,
Not
your
well.
brother, you were a Christian because your brother and all that, and yeah.
Not good, Bob. Not good.
No.
That's from a TV show. No, that was a whole thing. My daughters initially shunned me, and by extension, my wife, my ex-wife. So we went through several years of that. I've reconnected with one of my daughters. The other one is still disconnected from me by her choice. My son is fine with me. He never had an issue with it. In fact, he's kind of followed me down the road a little bit. But living in New York City will do that to you, you know, with that diversity and experiences. My mom and my brother, my brother's an evangelical pastor and has been for 50 years. My mom's a Jesus-loving, sweet little lady who's quite disturbed about my atheism. They're praying hard for me, so you see how that's going.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's been a definite disconnect. All of my extended family it's not just even in these, you know, these are different days. It's not just the religion, it's the politics and the differences that are amplified, if you will, because of the political narratives of the day, the polarization of politics in this country of the last 5 or 6 years. Prior to that, there was just the differences there because of my departure from the faith. But now with them, you know, being Trump lovers and me being a socialist, as they would say, as if they even know what that means. Socialist, in my opinion, simply must mean that you care about other people in some way. That seems to be what they object to. That I have empathy and compassion for those less fortunate than me. That seems to be a problem with them. Sorry, I'm getting off on politics.
It's okay.
It happens.
But it does. There's a definite distance between me and pretty much everyone else in my family. And it's primarily formed because of our religious divergences. And I've maintained an open door policy. I mean, I'm here. And I've done that with friends and everything. I have this attitude that I've had for years. And it's just like, it's simply this. If you can accept me for who I am without me having to change myself around you, without me having to be someone different in your presence, then I'm fine with you. I'll be your friend, whether you call yourself a Christian or not. I'm who I am. And if you can allow me to be that, then we can be friends and do life. If not, then that's your problem, not mine. And I'm not gonna let you make it my problem.
That's awesome.
We just met. I have a good friend who's a prominent TikToker. You probably know who she is. Eve was framed.
Oh yeah, she's great.
And
I like her.
her family is her dad's a prominent evangelical prophetic figure, Trump loving, that kind of. We just met them and had coffee with them last weekend.
Oh, nice.
Bevan and I with him and his wife, and we had a wonderful time. They're wonderful people. They just believe batshit crazy stuff. But we're friends, and we're going to be friends. And we'll have hard conversations, probably.
Yeah.
But I'm fine with whatever. I will not hold back what I think about subjects that are important. Like I would tell my family, I don't know how you vote for a person like Trump. He's, you call yourself a Christian and you're all about morality, and then you cast your vote for the most immoral political figure in our lifetime. Yeah. Clearly, I don't know how you do that. So I tell them that.
If there ever is a beast, it's definitely that guy. I mean,
the Antichrist, right?
I mean, come on. It's all over the place. But that does bring me to my next question, though. You were in the Jesus movement in the 70s.
Yeah.
What is it like from there to now? Like, what's the difference? Like, how is it more? Is it more violent? Is it more just outspoken?
We believed what the Bible actually says. That's the kind of Christian I was. And the Bible actually says, my kingdom is not of this world, to quote Jesus. He didn't care about politics. He wasn't trying to overtake Rome. He wasn't trying to make the nation Christian. So we cared about saving people's souls. We cared about reaching the lost. We cared about morality. You didn't have sex with someone you weren't married to because you felt like that's what the Bible taught. And we cared about the individual person being saved from hell and being destined for heaven. There was no politicization of anything we did. We didn't care about trying to make the nation Christian. We didn't try to make kingdom authority in government. We didn't do any of that stuff. That wasn't even on the radar of the Christian leaders at the time. I don't know when it shifted. I think in the 80s it started shifting. But now it's more politics and power than it is love. We taught love. We followed the hippie movement, was just love, man. Love. It's all about love, brother.
Yeah.
and that's what we taught in the Jesus movement. That was what it was about. Peace and love. And so we really believed that. We really lived that. I don't recognize the Christianity of today. I really don't. I don't know how they can continue to call them. They're not evangelical because they're not trying to save people's souls. They're trying to. It's almost like the days when they were the
concubine.
Oh,
I was like, I don't know.
Conquistadors or whatever.
Okay.
Overtaking the land and killing them if they don't become Christians. Concubines.
It's a theocracy.
Yeah, it's a theocracy.
They definitely want that theocracy. They want to rule the nation.
Crusades. I don't know why I lost that. The Crusades.
I don't know why I thought concubine.
Crusading concubines.
Get your mind out of the gutter, Apostacie.
It's always there, apparently. I'm
always there.
Oh man, yeah. Now it's definitely more aggressive nowadays, and it's a little scary to see where it's going.
Oh, it's very scary.
I think
there are people in that world, in that mindset that, in fact, on the last couple weeks ago, the Dave's experience, and we had a caller that literally was defending the Crusades and saying that it's okay to spread the gospel by the sword because you're helping people to get the right frame of mind. So there are people who believe that if you we're getting there, that if you don't name the name of Jesus and pray the prayer, then it's okay to kill you.
Yeah.
But they're the ones being persecuted. Let's don't forget.
And they're the good guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're the loving ones. Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Thanks a lot, guys.
So when you deconverted, were you still a pastor at a church?
Good question.
No, I was an associate pastor in my last gig in a church outside of Nashville, and I was at the mega church movement. Kind of became this thing where they would have one church, multiple congregations. That was how they would grow their church,
right?
Because you could only have so many people in one building. So the way that you could grow your churches, you had multiple congregations around the city.
Yeah.
And so that's what we were doing in Nashville. And they put me in charge of one of the congregations. And I was doing really well with it, but I wasn't kissing the ass of the senior pastor well enough because I'm just not one that does that very well. And I was brought in for a series. I mean, the part of the book that people tell me makes them squirm the most is when I'm describing those meetings where the pastors call me in. Dave, we need to talk. You know, and I'm brought in for this inquisition, and I was brought in on charges of independence. They told me, Dave, you're too independent. And so
rebel.
They're not wrong. They're not wrong. I was. But that led to me being dismissed from that church. Oh, wow. And when that happened, that actually led, because my daughters at the time were they are married to men who were at the time in what they called a student intern program, where they were being groomed to be pastors. And so they were. I didn't think that it would go this way, but when I was let go, they kind of sided against me and with the pastor in the church, and he encouraged them to shun me.
Oh my gosh!
Even though I was still very much a Christian at the time. Wow. And that pain, the pain of that, and the disorientation of that was the catalyst that caused me to really start examining the faith that I'd given my life to, and the God that wasn't showing up to help me. And so I kind of began to really start asking some hard questions at that point. And so I started doing insurance because that's what ex-pastors do, and was doing quite well with that for the until I got diagnosed with ALS and retired. But after a couple of years, after being let go from the church, we went to a different church, and it was just as bad. But I wasn't on staff there. I was just a lay leader. But I did come to the conclusion after a couple of years that God wasn't there. But I wasn't on staff when that happened, so I didn't have to. You know, I'm a part of the Clergy Project, and that's an organization that helps pastors who no longer believe, or clergy of any kind, kind of find themselves, if you will. And a lot of them struggle with finding out how to make a living after. If you're a pastor and you've never actually got any life skills, you went to seminary and then you're a pastor. Now what do you do? So I've known pastors who lost their faith, who couldn't or wouldn't leave their church job because they had no way to support their family.
Yeah, that's tough.
So that's I didn't have that problem.
So most of the deconverts I've talked to on the show as well too are drummers. Did you drum for the church by any chance?
You know what? There are a lot of ex-Christian drummers. I don't know what the hell.
Something about it.
I've got a bunch of friends in Nashville that we are. We had this ex-Christian atheist meetup group we did once a month, and I swear there's 5 or 6 of them that are drummers, and good drummers that
right.
You know, played for a living. One guy actually was a drummer for Stephen Curtis Chapman.
Oh wow!
Oh my gosh!
And as an atheist, was still drumming for Stephen Curtis. and he told Stephen, I don't believe this anymore.
Oh my God.
Well, that's kind of a problem, but you're a good drummer. We need you. So we got a gig this weekend. And he would go out on the road with him, and they would be backstage doing their prayer, and he would just be over there going, whatever, you know.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? And
atheist
so I don't know what it is, but there's a lot of drummers. But no, I never drummed. I was a guitar player. I played guitar and led worship some.
Well, close enough.
Never professionally. Yeah, close enough.
Check that box anyways.
Yeah.
Some kind of worship leader.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know what it is about the drummers though, because there were 5 or 6 of them in Nashville that were Nashville breeds drummers, you know.
They just seem a little more rebellious, maybe.
I think that's what it is.
That's probably what it is.
Yeah, we should do a poll.
Oh, we should
this one day.
There has to be.
I love it in the chat. Aaron says Stacy goes straight to concubine.
I know. I just heard the conk.
Yeah, well, I was struggling for the
Crusading
word.
concubines.
I was trying to help you. I was like, okay.
I was looking for crusades,
I
and
know.
somehow my mind was trying to get to conquistadors, which is nothing
Okay.
related to
It's got to be the hat.
crusades.
I think it's the hat.
I don't know what I was doing.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh man.
Works either way. So you we're doing that a lot here. The ALS community. I'm sure you've been in touch with them and whatnot. Are they majority Christians, or is it a mixed bag? Or
yeah.
The
I don't get it.
majority are Christian.
90.
Wow.
If they're not, even those who really weren't beforehand, the old "there's no atheists in foxholes" shit. Yeah. So you find these people who were just kind of nonchalant about faith, and then they get a terminal diagnosis and they go, "Oh shit! I hope there's God. Hey, God!" And so they're kind of grasping at straws, but it's kind of been Bevan's. She's in the chat rooms a lot more than I am, and she just sees so many of them. They're praying and they're thanking God, and it's just the most bizarre thing. ALS takes everything from you, and so there'll be posts on there where they say, "Well, I was able to walk from the kitchen to the living room today. Praise God. He gave me the ability to make those steps." And I just want to shake them and say, "You stupid fucker. How can you say that? This God gave you, or at least let you, get ALS, and you're thanking him because you were able to walk 6 steps. What the fuck?" But I don't do that. I don't. If they really get obnoxious, I might get on there and say, "Really? Have you thought this through?" But I don't really do it much. There's a chat room or a Facebook group that's ALS people for non-religious, but it's really small. But I don't know. I don't get it. The cognitive dissonance is just staggering to me.
It is. Specifically, I've talked to several pastors who've lost kids. Bible Says What episode coming up this next week? He lost both his kids, one to suicide.
Ooh.
It's unbelievable the amount of faith he still holds on to after that. It's just baffles me.
Well, I've seen it firsthand. I read about it in my book. I had my own brother, who's a pastor, lost his daughter in a car wreck when she was 23, and I was still a believer there. I was right in the middle of all that. Another pastor, I didn't mention this in the book, but years ago lost his son, who was young, a toddler, and then another pastor that I talk about in the book late in life, this church that we went to after the one I was fired from, his son was killed in a car wreck, and yet they just double down on their faith. And that's almost like it's almost like they have to. In other words, if I have any chance of seeing this child again, I've got to believe this way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think you're probably right, because when I deconverted and I realized, oh my gosh, like this is it. I actually had a bit of a it was good, but I had this kind of moment. It happened more than once where I was like, oh my gosh, my children are just so precious. I have to just appreciate every moment I have with them. And once I die, or heaven or whatever, something forbid happens.
Heaven forbid.
Heaven forbid.
God forbid.
Something happens to them. I would live the rest of my life knowing, okay,
that was it.
That was it. Yeah.
This is
That's
it.
A tough
And
one.
I think that's really hard for people to just reconcile with.
And it is. It's easier to hold out hope for something, even if you might cognitively realize it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
You still think, okay, well, it's not going to cost me any more to believe this or to hope this, and so let me just hang on to this little thread here.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't want to ever take that I don't want to take that away from anyone, but neither do I want to believe things that aren't true. I want to believe things that are true, and there's no evidence to suggest that anyone shows up somewhere after they die in some altered state or some cloud or whatever the hell that would be. I think, the people think, okay, I'll never get to see Dad again. Other people think, I'll never have to see Dad again. There's both sides to that coin.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know. It's a tough one. I understand why people cling to stuff like that. I really do.
Yeah. On kind of that same note, how did you feel about, did you have a fear of hell when you deconverted? Did you have to get over that in any way?
I think part of my deconstruction process was such that I let go of certain ideas that were contained within Christianity along the way. And one of those that I let go of pretty early on was the concept of hell. Thinking that, okay, this really doesn't make much sense. And to be honest, I never was, because I came to the Lord as an 18-year-old. That wasn't an indoctrination into me as a kid.
Yeah.
I think when people are indoctrinated as children before you've developed your frontal cortex and you don't have the ability to cognitively sort that out, you just believe what your authority figures tell you. It gets lodged into a subconscious place that can haunt you your whole life. I never had to deal with that. And in fact, the kind of Christianity that we practiced as Jesus freaks wasn't heavy on hell. It was all about God loves you and wants to bless your life and wants to make you a better person. So I wasn't a firebrand kind of preacher either. I never talked about hell when I preached or when I taught. It was about what God wants to do in your life now and how God wants to make you more like him and grow you as a believer. So letting go of hell wasn't a traumatic concept at all for me.
Yeah, I think you nailed that one. I think it's when you've been taught it or it's been hammered into you as a kid. I think that's when it makes it the hardest to get rid of. That's for sure.
Yeah, because it's lodged somewhere in your subconscious almost. And that's one of the most traumatic things I've dealt with ex-Christians who were raised in it as from birth, is they'll wake up in the night, screaming like I'm dreaming I've gone to hell. And their mind has known for years that it's not true, that it doesn't make sense, but their subconscious emotional spirit, if you will, it's still a thing that they wrestle with. And it's just tragic. It's the worst kind of child abuse, in my opinion. That teaching and the teaching that there's something wrong with you as a child that needs to be fixed or saved
by blood.
That's
just
hideous.
For being born.
You because you had the audacity to be born, Stacy. Jesus had to die. I didn't do anything wrong. Yes, you did. You were born, you little sinner.
Yeah.
Dirty.
From the time you were in your mother's womb is what they were.
What a hideous message.
Yeah.
Terrible thing to teach kids.
It's horrible.
Terrible.
It's awful.
Child abuse. Absolutely. Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That was definitely the hardest thing to get rid of is the hell. That's a lot of Christian or ex-Christians thing that lingers the most.
I think so.
Do you by any chance, it's gonna be a weird one, remember your last prayer?
You know what? I don't, but it may very well have been when I did my son's wedding. I officiated my son's wedding because I kind of had one foot out the door at that point. Now, it may not have been my last prayer, but it may have been my last public prayer, which are the only ones that matter,
That's what Jesus says. Pray
Jesus can't hear you unless you say it out loud in front of a bunch of people or at school or at a school board meeting.
Oh, Jesus.
Those are the only prayers that count. So I don't really know. I was letting go of things all along the way. It was just like driving down the road and pieces of a car falling off, It's kind of felt that way. Well, there goes a fender. Well, there goes a tire,
I can still drive 3.
Yeah, I'm still going.
Oh, that's good. That's a good way to describe it too. I like that. Question from the group here. Dave, have you or are you an angry atheist after deconverting? There it is.
Yeah, I wake up angry every day. I mean, not obviously, but I did go through the angry atheist phase.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us do. We feel like we've been duped. We feel like we wasted, for me, it was a lot of life, the best years of my life given to a lie. I only had myself to blame. So if I would say I was angry, it would be at myself for being so credulous and not examining more closely something that important. So I had no one to blame but myself, but I was pissed in that I felt like this just really messed my life up.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways it did, but I did it willfully. I wasn't, I mean, a lot of people are born into it. I wasn't. I came into it as an 18-year-old young man. So I should have had more, ability to look at this more closely than I did. But the angry phase probably didn't last that long. It probably was just, okay, now I'm out of it and I've got a bunch of good friends and my life is good. So let's move on and put the past behind us.
Carpe diem. That's what
Carpe the fucking diem.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
I love that, by the way.
That was one of the phrases that came out of that dying out loud thing that just kind of organically happened. I actually had a friend had given me a pillow that had that stitched on it. And I kind of started, and it was actually before the diagnosis of ALS, and I kind of started living that way. But then when I got diagnosed and started doing dying out loud stuff, I kind of mashed the accelerator down on that. And really it became the gist of the dying out loud message, in that you have to seize the day and grab the moments and live your best life now, because this is the only life we know we have. And we have to make the most of it and go for it now and do the things you want to do, live the life you want to live, write the story you want to write. It's on you to do that, and no one else is going to do it for you.
So true.
Yeah.
Great words to live by, man.
Yeah, really
good. With your travel and all, where's the best place you travel to? What's your favorite place so far?
Oh man, we just did a trip, an ALS foundation that does adventure trips, gave us a trip that's kind of like a Make-A-Wish thing. And they do, in fact, we actually connected with two of them this year. But we did a trip to Europe to see Greece and Italy. And Bevan had always been wanting me to get to Greece, and I'd always been wanting her to get to Italy, because my favorite place probably in the world is the Amalfi Coast of Italy. And it's just stunningly beautiful. And she'd always been, her favorite was Greece, the white buildings that everyone sees. So we got to do that a few months ago. And then recently we went scuba diving to Hawaii. Wow. Another trip that was given to us by an ALS foundation. And that trip turned out to be more than I expected, in that the group that sponsored us was doing what they call adaptive scuba diving, because I can't do it by myself with my limitations with my hands. So part of what they kind of a bonus feature, they let us jump out of a helicopter into the water. Yeah,
that's awesome.
That was fun. And then once we were down under the water, about 40 feet down, they brought me an octopus. Oh. And I've got pictures on my social media, if you're curious about it, on my Twitter and Facebook, where I got to play with this octopus for about a half an hour. And we became friends. We're Facebook friends, and we talk often, this octopus and I. And we bonded. So we bonded under the water.
I hear they're pretty friendly.
They're beyond anything I've ever experienced. They're super intelligent, we're told. And you could see when I put my hand out, he would wrap his arms, he, she, they, them, I don't know, would wrap their tentacles around my arm. And it didn't hurt. They just were holding on. And then they would relax and just look at me, and I would look at them, and we would just be there. It was just beautiful. I can't describe it. It was just the most surreal experience of my life. And so those two trips this year culminate, the things I've been trying to do with the Carpe fucking Diem concept. And I know that not everybody can just jump up and do that. I'm aware of that.
It'd be nice.
But my attitude with a terminal illness is I'm doing everything I can do while I can do it. And those are things that were presented to me, and the opportunity arose, and so I took it. And I'll jump out of anything anywhere. I don't care.
Wow.
Did you have any like James Bond music playing while you were doing it?
That'd be cool.
I should make a video with that and
there you go.
And edit that in.
That's a great idea.
But we went skydiving a couple years ago, and that was pretty fun.
Where'd you go skydiving at?
Just here in North Carolina or South Carolina, somewhere close. Man. It wasn't, it's just up, but jumping out of a plane at 15,000 feet is a different experience.
I'm sure.
No, thank you.
I gotta know, can you breathe on the way down? Because I don't know. I would just sticking my head out the car window sometimes.
Yeah,
I can't even breathe.
Yeah. I think I breathed.
I mean,
we were free falling for quite a while, so I must have breathed.
Oh,
but even that was a magical experience because, of course, I've got this dude strapped to my back. I didn't do it by myself. But you're supposed to high five, thumbs up the photographer and high five them. But I couldn't get my hands up because my arms don't work so well. And so I'm falling through the air with my arms down by my side like fins on a fish, and it's just I'm just falling like this. And so when he pulled the string and we started floating, I told him, listen, the reason I couldn't do my arms up is because I have ALS. I didn't tell him that beforehand because I was afraid they wouldn't let me go. But afterwards, I said, what are they going to do now? Throw me out
exactly.
So I told him that I couldn't get my hands up. And he said, dude, I lost a friend to ALS. And he said, I'm going to give you the ride of your life. And so we went off the route and started going zigzagging around. Bevan's over in her chute looking, where is he going? And he put my arm up and let me steer it. And it just really meant a lot for him to be able to do that for me. And it made it more special. So, we talked backstage about talking about ALS. That's what makes it powerful is when I do talk about these things, and it allows people to join in that experience with me and make a connection. Yeah. And it makes everything much more meaningful. And they take something away from it they wouldn't have if I hadn't said something. You know what I mean? So that's why I talk about it.
That's beautiful, man.
Yeah. I think it's really good that you do. I've learned a lot about it from you. So
how are you doing? How are you doing? Oh, maybe interview the octopus next week. See how they've been, see if they remember.
Anton's a faithful viewer of my show on Monday nights. He's a great guy. He's in Mexico. I'm doing okay. I'm definitely progressing. When they say progressing, it sounds backwards. That sounds like a positive thing. It's a negative thing. Yeah. It means that the disease is progressing. For the long, I have learned that my version of ALS is a very slow progressing form. So that's good. I honestly thought I'd be dead in 3 years. I really did. But for the longest time, the symptoms were pretty much in my hands and arms. Now it's moving to my legs. The doctor told me it would probably go from my hands to my legs and then to my mouth and breathing and swallowing and things. That's the last thing that goes. It's good because I talk. If I can't talk, I don't know what I'm going to do. But now it's becoming more difficult to walk. That Europe trip, I didn't plan it well enough. I'm always thinking I can do more than I can do, and then I get in the middle of it and I realize, oh shit, Dave, you can't keep. I overschedule meetings, I overschedule travel. I've had to cancel meetings this year because I just get too worn out. I book too many things together, and I have to rest. And it's hard on Babin because she's got to do all the driving, she's got to do all the packing and loading and all that. But we got to Europe and it was getting hard to get around. So we actually were looking to rent a wheelchair in Italy, and we couldn't rent one. So we found Bevan and one of my friends, Eric, who was with me, we went with several friends. They were looking at a pharmacy, and they went around to this pharmacy, and I can't remember the name of this town in Italy, but the guy had a wheelchair there that was for sale. And we realized that it's just a collapsible, portable one, that it was going to be as cheap to buy one as it would have been to rent one. So I bought a wheelchair in Italy, and brought it home. And I joke because my first car when I was 17 years old was a Fiat Spider convertible. A Fiat is made in Italy.
Yeah.
So I've come full circle. My first wheels were Italian, and my last wheels are Italian.
Imported.
So here we are. I've got an imported wheelchair.
Yeah.
Fancy.
That's awesome.
But it's definitely catching up with me. Things are getting harder. We climbing stairs is getting more difficult, and walking. It's definitely catching up to me. It's been slow, which I'm grateful for. Obviously, that's a God thing. I can only thank God for that. So I'm going to announce on your show that I'm returning to Christianity. Speaking tour will commence next year.
Oh, you're going to make the big bucks.
I could make a shit ton of money, y'all. You know that, right?
Right? Will your speaking tour start April 1st?
Yeah. Oh, Stacy, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. I'm going to post that on April 1st.
Perfect.
Oh my God.
Oh, we'll be looking out for that one.
Yeah. Don't tell anybody. I could make a shit ton of money. I really.
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
Anybody, deconverts.
You actually could.
Yeah.
Reconverts, and he's got ALS, and
we need to take up a love offering.
I could fake it. I could just act like I'm doing it and make 100%. All the money, and then at the end of it, go, got you.
God's not real. Fuck you guys.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's great.
It's a great idea, though. I like it.
I think I'm gonna think that through.
Ron Hubbard, the religion.
Yeah.
So, do you have any projects coming up? What's coming up?
Oh well, I'm working on another book. Not a memoir. I mean, you can only write one memoir, or you should. Famous people write several, I think.
This decade.
But I'm working on a book called Dying Out Loud, and it's really kind of the subtitle I'm working with is something like The Things I Learned About Living While Dying. And just a lot of the experiences I've had with the Dying Out Loud work, and the people I've met, and the conversation I've had. I'll probably include a lot of the messages I've gotten from people over the last 3 years, because they're just amazing. I started hearing from people all over the world who were inspired by what I was saying and doing. And I don't use that word lightly, because I don't think of myself as an inspiration, and it was hard to accept that at first, because I was just talking about my life and things that were important. But when I heard it over and over and over and over again from people who my message was having a positive impact on, I started to believe, okay, this is true. This is a thing. And I need to accept it and just do the most I can with that. And it's just been the most meaningful period of my life, honestly, because I feel like I've done more to really help people in these last few years of my life than I ever did as a Christian. than I ever did as in the other versions of myself. And it just happened because I got ALS. So I don't know how to make sense of that, because none of this would have happened. You guys would not be talking to me now if I'd not gotten ALS. So I don't know what to do with that, but it is what it is. And I've just embraced it and accepted it. And so the book that I'll release next year will be that one.
Kat says you're awesome.
Thank you, Kat. That's kind of what I'm working on loosely. I've not put the hammer down to. You can't write a book unless you really write every day. This is what I've learned. Anybody out there that's thinking of writing a book, it's only going to be an idea in your head until you start disciplining yourself to write every single fucking day.
It's tough, but do
Period.
it. Do it. It's worth it.
And honestly, if God hadn't sent COVID, thank you, Jesus. I probably would have never gotten my book written, because we were traveling and speaking and had stuff on the calendar. We were scheduled out the wazoo, and I loved it. I wanted to do that. I love that more than anything, is meeting with people in person and talking. I just talk. But I was so busy, I wasn't taking the time to write. But when COVID happened, I had no excuses. I simply, literally every single day went to a coffee shop and wrote.
Nice.
And that's how the book got finished. And so I know that the other one won't get done until I start doing that. So I'm going to cut down on travel, because it is getting more difficult. I'll probably next year only do conferences, where I can go and be there for 2 or 3 days and kind of reach more people with one trip, if you know what I mean. I can't really go to a lot of smaller groups because it's too much on us physically. Yeah. So once I cut down on the travel and really get serious and get disciplined, I'll get the other book hammered out. Other than that, it's just doing as much of this stuff as I can while I can. Conferences next year, my show, GD show. That's pretty much on the schedule. People ask me what's left on the bucket list. I don't know. I got to come up with a new bucket, because
that's good. That's good.
I've been checking them off. So I don't know. We'll see.
Awesome. I was thinking, how about Chicken Soup for the Soulless Atheist as your subtitle there?
What's that now?
Chicken Soup for the Soulless Atheist.
You want me to write that?
That's for your subtitle on your Dying Out Loud there.
Chicken Soup for the Soulless.
Just came to me.
Chicken soup for that soul you don't have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So one final question here. I do see it in the chat here, and I've asked most of our guests this same question. I am very curious. Why do you hate God?
God.
Because he's a dick.
That's a bad answer.
Not a nice guy. Just saying. I've said this before. If someone were to prove to me that the God of the Bible was real, I still wouldn't worship him.
No way.
No.
And if I ever met him, I would have some serious questions. What is wrong with you?
It's a good one. That's a good starter. Yeah. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
You insecure, petty, childish, jealous piece of shit.
Yes. Oh my
Absolutely.
gosh.
Absolutely.
Yes. Great answer.
That is definitely my favorite one so far.
Yes.
Thanks. Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
Wow.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Dave. We appreciate it. Appreciate the conversation.
Pleasure.
Appreciate all you do. Keep it up. Don't stop. Where can we find your stuff at? And you got any closing statements for us?
Oh God. You know
Final
what?
Thoughts is the word.
The only final thought I would give you is the quote I have on one of our t-shirts, which you can find at our merch store at the website, which is daveoutloud.org. Not Dying Out Loud, that was taken. daveoutloud.org. You can see my schedule if we're doing something near you. People who get the book, if you've got one of the favorite things I did recently in Nashville last week was a book reading and Q&A at a coffee shop.
Awesome.
And the coffee shop was actually owned by a Christian, a believer who likes to foster conversations and things. So he had me come in, and the place was packed. There were about 40 people there, but it was a regular coffee shop like a Starbucks that you'd go to. It wasn't a Starbucks, it was independently owned. But what was cool is there were several people that I talked to afterwards who were just coming in to get a coffee.
Nice.
And they didn't know that there was a dude there talking about a book and God and heaven and hell and atheists and all that. And they stuck around and talked to me afterwards and got a book even.
Wow.
So any of the readers who have a coffee shop in your hometown and want to bring me in for a reading, I really, really love that. And the interaction with people of all kinds of ideologies and worldviews, some Christian, some atheist, some deconstructing process, all that. So that's a thing I hope to do a little bit next year. But awesome. One of the things I always say, a quote that I've used a lot, that's the last line of a poem called "My Soul Has a Hat" by Mario de Andrade. It simply says, "We have two lives, and the second begins when you realize you only have one." And that changes everything. As a former believer who thought this is a prelude to eternal life, this is it. This is the one life we know we have. And once we realize that and come to terms with that, like you said earlier, Stacy, not thinking there's something beyond this. Once we come to terms with this is all we got, then you get about living.
Yes.
So my tour, if you will, is not really about dying out loud. It's about living out loud.
Awesome sauce.
Yeah. I love it.
Thanks, Dave. Stacy, where can we find your stuff at?
Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and then I'm here on Wednesdays with you.
Absolutely. Every Wednesday. You can find me at thebiblesayswhat.com. My show shows every Sunday. Then I do this every Wednesday. I'd like to stop and thank the patrons of the show, of course. Kathy Cotton, Cindy Plaza, Bryce Aroni, Deborah Gray, Sunny Shell, Aaron Coalson, and Phil Calderone. Thanks, guys, so much for your support. Don't forget to spay and neuter your pets. We'll see you next week.